Vataku Doera Sagara Edase Karuna Kori Diya Padachaya Shorohe Amai Tomara Charana Dhori Chaya Vega Domi Chaya Dosha Shohi Chaya Guna Deho Dase Chaya Satsanga Deho He Amare Boshachi Sange Rashe Ekaki ama nahi pai bhalo harinama sankirtane Tumi kripa kori sharabindu diya deho Krishna nama dhane Krishna se tomar Krishna gite paro tomara shakti ache Amito Kanga Krishna Krishna Boli Daitava Pache Pache Amito Kanga Krishna Krishna Boli Daitava Pache Oh hey Vaishnava Thakur Doira Sagara Idase Karuna Kori Jaya Vaishnava Thakur Vaishnava Thakur Vaishnava Thakur Jaya Vaishnava Thakur Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Ujjvala Varana Gaura Bharate Vilasita Niravari Bhava Videha Shri Bhuvana Pavana Kripaya Lesham Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanaya Gagaram Dara Janna Karjana Nada Vishalam Vikaram Bababaya Bhajana Karana Karanam Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam Aranam Bharadara Charu Kapola Indu Vinindita Nakachaya Ruchiram Jalpita Nijaguna Nama Vinodam Tavranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam Galita Nayan Kamala Jalagaram Ushanarama Rasa Bhava Vikaram Gati Yati Mantara Nritya Vilasam Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam Jai Sachinandan Gaura Hari Ki Jai Chanchala Charu Charana Gati Ruchira Manjiram Jitta Pada Juga Madhuram Chandra Vindindita Shitala Varanam Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam Buddha Pati Dora Kamandalu Gandam Divyakalevara Mundita Mundam Janna Kalmasha Kandana Gandam Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam Bhushana Bhuraja Lakavalitam Kampita Vindara Vara Ruchiram Malayajavira Chitta Vijvala Tilakam Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam Ninditaruna Kamala Dalanayanam Ajanulam Vita Shri Bhujayugalam Varakaishora Nataka Vesha Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam Udala Varana Priya Varadeha Ilakita Niravari Bhava Videha Violation, Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam Jai Sachinandana Jai Sachinandana Jai Sachidanand, Jaya Sachidanand, Jaya Sachidanand, Jaya Gaura Hari. Jai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Jai Gaura Hari Bo. Parama Karuna Parama Karuna Pahundri Jana Nitai Gaurachandra Shabhavatar Shadashiramani Kevalaya Nandakanda Bhajo Bhajo Bhai Chaitanya Nitai Sudrida Vishwasa Kori Vishaya Charya Shera Shemajiya Mukhe Bolo Hari Hari Tribhuvane Emana Dayala Dasa Pashu Paki Chure Pashana Vidare Shunijar Gunakasa Sankare Mojiya Ruhili Poya Sepade Nahi Lo Asha Apana Karama Bonjay Shamana Koeo Lochana Dasa Parama Karuna Bahubijana Nitai Gaura Chandra Nitai Gaura Chandra Nitai Gaura Chandra Viprapari Vipabari Shesha Alokapa Satsayita Jiva Bolo Hari Hari Mukunda Murari Rama Krishna Haya Jiva Nrsimha Vamana Shimadhusurana Rajendra Nandana Shama Putana Gatana Tvaitava Shatana Jaya Dasharathi Rama Yashoda Dulala Govinda Gopala Vrindavana Purandara Gopi Priya Jana Radhika Ramana Bhuvana Sundara Bhara Ravana Katara Mamana Katara Gopi Jana Vasrahari Rajira Rakala Gopa Vrindakala Chitta Hari Vamsidhari Yogindra Vandana Shrinandanandana Rajatana Vayahari Navila Nirara Rupa Manohara Mohana Vamshirihari Yashoda Nandana Kamsani Shurana Nikunjara Savilasi Karambakanana Rasaparayana Vritaviki Nadilasi Ananda Vardhana Premani Ketana Ulachara Jojakama Gopangana Chitta Vinodana Samasta Guna Gana Gana Jamuna Jivana Kiriparayana Manasa Chandra Chakora Namshudarasa Jao Krishna Jasa Rato Vatana Manamoda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaigo Premanande, chapter 18, Bhagavad Gita. Thank you. We'll recite the English together. Moksha Yoga. Arjuna said, O mighty armed one, I wish to understand the purpose of renunciation, Tyaga, and of the renounced order of life, sannyas. O killer of the Keshi demon, master of the senses. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the giving up of activities that are based on material desire is what learned men call the renounced order of life, sannyas. And giving up the results of all activities is what the wise call renunciation, tyaga. Some learned men declare that all kinds of fruitive activities should be given up as faulty. Yet other sages maintain that acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance should never be abandoned. O best of the Bharatas, now hear my judgment about renunciation. O tiger among men, renunciation is declared in the scriptures to be of three kinds. Acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance are not to be given up. They must be performed. Indeed, sacrifice, charity, and penance purify even the great souls. All these activities should be performed without attachment or any expectation of result. They should be performed as a matter of duty, O son of Pritha. That is my final opinion. Prescribed duties should never be renounced. If one gives up his prescribed duties because of illusion, such renunciation is said to be in the mode of ignorance. Anyone who gives up prescribed duties as troublesome or out of fear of bodily discomfort is said to have renounced in the mode of passion. Such action never leads to elevation, renunciation. O Arjuna, when one performs his prescribed duty only because it ought to be done, and renounces all material association and all attachment to the fruit, his renunciation is said to be in the mode of goodness. The intelligent renouncer, situated in the mode of goodness, neither hateful of inauspicious work, nor attached to auspicious work, has no doubts about work. It is indeed impossible for an embodied being to give up all activities, but he who renounces the fruits of action is called one who has truly renounced. For one who has not renounced the threefold fruits of action, desirable, undesirable, and mixed, accrue after death. But those who are in the renounced order of life have no such result to suffer or enjoy. O mighty armed Arjuna, according to the Vedanta, there are 5 causes for the accomplishment of all action. Now learn of these from me. The place of action, the body. The performer, the various senses. The many different kinds of endeavor. And ultimately the supersoul. These are the 5 factors of action. Whatever right or wrong action a man performs by body, mind, or speech is caused by these 5 factors. Therefore, one who thinks himself the only doer, not considering the 5 factors, is certainly not very intelligent and cannot see things as they are. One who is not motivated by false ego, whose intelligence is not entangled, though he kills men in this world, does not kill, nor is he bound by his actions. Knowledge, the object of knowledge, and the knower are the 3 factors that motivate action. The senses, the work, and the doer are the 3 constituents of action. According to the 3 different modes of material nature, there are 3 kinds of knowledge, action, and performer action. Now hear of them from me. That knowledge by which one undivided spiritual nature is seen in all living entities, though they are divided into innumerable forms, you should understand to be in the mode of goodness. That knowledge by which one sees that in every different body there is a different type of living entity, you should understand to be in the mode of passion. And that knowledge by which one is attached to one kind of work as the all-in-all, without knowledge of the truth, and which is very meager, is said to be in the mode of darkness. That action which is regulated and which is performed without attachment, without love or hatred, and without desire for fruitive results is said to be in the mode of goodness. But action performed with great effort by one seeking to gratify his desires, and enacted from a sense of false ego, is called action in the mode of passion. That action performed in illusion, in disregard of scriptural injunctions, and without concern for future bondage or for violence or distress caused to others, is said to be in the mode of ignorance. One who performs his duty without association with the modes of material nature, without false ego, with great determination and enthusiasm, and without wavering in success or failure, is said to be a worker in the mode of goodness. The worker who is attached to work and the fruits of work, desiring to enjoy those fruits, and who is greedy, always envious, impure, and moved by joy and sorrow, is said to be in the mode of passion. The worker who is always engaged in work against the injunctions of the scripture, who is materialistic, obstinate, cheating, and expert in insulting others, and who is lazy, always morose and procrastinating, is said to be a worker in the mode of ignorance. O winner of wealth, now please listen as I tell you in detail of the different kinds of understanding and determination according to the three modes of material nature. O son of Pritha, that understanding by which one knows what ought to be done and what ought not to be done, what is to be feared and what is not to be feared, what is minding and what is liberating, is in the mode of goodness. O son of Pritha, that understanding which cannot distinguish between religion and irreligion, between action that should be done and action that should not be done, is in the mode of passion. That understanding which considers irreligion to be religion and religion to be irreligion under the spell of illusion and darkness, and strives always in the wrong direction, O Partha, is in the mode of ignorance. O son of Pritha, that determination which is unbreakable, which is sustained with steadfastness by yoga practice, and which thus controls the activities of the mind, life, and senses, is determination in the mode of goodness. But that determination by which one holds fast to fruitive results in religion, economic development, and sense gratification is of the nature of passion, O Arjuna. And that determination which cannot go beyond dreaming, fearfulness, lamentation, moroseness, and illusion, such unintelligent determination, O son of Pritha, is in the mode of darkness. O best of the Bharatas, now please hear from me about the three kinds of happiness by which the conditioned soul enjoys, and by which he sometimes comes to the end of all distress. That which in the beginning may be just like poison, but at the end is just like nectar, and which awakens one to self-realization, is said to be happiness in the mode of goodness. That happiness which is derived from contact of the senses with their objects, and which appears like nectar at first but poison at the end, is said to be of the nature of passion. And that happiness which is blind to self-realization, which is delusion from beginning to end, and which arises from sleep, laziness, and illusion, is said to be of the nature of ignorance. There is no being existing, either here or among the demigods and the higher planetary systems, which is free from these three modes born of material nature. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras are distinguished by the qualities born of their natures, according to the modes, O chastised enemy. Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, and religiousness. These are the qualities by which the Brahmanas work. Heroism, power, determination, resourcefulness, courage and battle, generosity and leadership are the natural qualities of work for the Kshatriyas. Farming, cow protection, and business are the natural work for the Vaishyas, and for the Shudras there are labor and service to others. By following his qualities of work, every man can become perfect. Now please hear from me how this can be done. By worship of the Lord, who is the source of all beings and who is all-pervading, a man can attain perfection through performing his own work. It is better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. Duties prescribed according to one's nature are never affected by sinful reactions. Every endeavor is covered by some fault, just as fire is covered by smoke. Therefore one should not give up the work born of his nature, O son of Kunti, even if such work is full of fault. One who is self-controlled and unattached, and who disregards all material enjoyments, can obtain by practice of renunciation the highest perfect stage of freedom from reaction. O son of Kunti, learn from me how one who has achieved this perfection can attain to the supreme perfectional stage, Brahman, the stage of highest knowledge, by acting in the way I shall now summarize. Being purified by his intelligence and controlling the mind with determination, giving up the objects of sense gratification, being free from attachment and hatred, one who lives in a secluded place, who eats little, who controls his body, mind, and power of speech, who is always in trance, and who is detached, free from false ego, false strength, false pride, lust, anger, and acceptance of material things, free from false proprietorship and peaceful. Such a person is certainly elevated to the position of self-realization. One who is thus transcendently situated at once realizes the supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed towards every living entity. In that state he attains pure devotional service unto me. One can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. And when one is in full consciousness of me by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. Though engaged in all kinds of activities, my pure devotee, under my protection, reaches the eternal and imperishable abode by my grace. In all activities, just depend upon me and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be fully conscious of me. If you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. If you do not act according to my direction, and do not fight, then you will be falsely directed. By your nature, you'll have to be engaged in warfare. Under illusion, you are now declining to act according to my direction, but compelled by the work born of your own nature, you will act all the same, O son of Kunti. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities, who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. O Sayana Bharat, surrender unto him utterly. By his grace you will attain transcendental peace and the supreme and eternal abode. Thus I have explained to you knowledge still more confidential. Deliberate on this fully, and then do what you wish to do. Because you are my very dear friend, I am speaking to you my supreme instruction, the most confidential knowledge of all. Hear this from me, for it is for your benefit. Always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this, because you are my very dear friend. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. This confidential knowledge may never be explained to those who are not austere or devoted or engaged in devotional service, nor to one who is envious of me. For one who explains this supreme secret to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed, and at the end he will come back to me. There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. And I declare that he who studies this sacred conversation of ours worships me by his intelligence. And one who listens with faith and without envy becomes free from sinful reactions and attains to the auspicious planets where the pious dwell. O son of Pritha, O conqueror of wealth, have you heard this with an attentive mind? And are your ignorance and illusions now dispelled? Arjuna said, My dear Krishna, O infallible one, my illusion is now gone. I have regained my memory by your mercy. I am now firm and free from doubt, and am prepared to act according to your instructions. Sanjaya said, Thus have I heard the conversation of two great souls, Krishna and Arjuna, and so wonderful is that message that my hair is standing on end. On the mercy of Vyasa, I have heard these most confidential talks directly from the master of all mysticism, Krishna, who is speaking personally to Arjuna. O King, as I repeatedly recall this wondrous and holy dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, I take pleasure being thrilled at every moment. O King, as I remember the wonderful form of Lord Krishna, I am struck with wonder more and more, and I rejoice again and again. Wherever there is Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever there is Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. That is my opinion. Shri Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Moksha Yoga ki jai. Namasheshtam manamapi shatiputramatra sarupam. Shri Rupam tasya grajam uruparim matarim goshavatim. Radha kundam girivaramoho radhika madhavasham. Prapto yasya pratita kripaya. One more time. Nama shreshtam manumapi shachiputram atra sarupam. Shri Rupam tasya grajam uruparim matarim goshavatim. Radha kundam girivaramoho radhika madhavasham. Prapto yasya pratita kripaya Shri Gurum tam natosmi. He Guru Jnanadadina Bandho Swananda Data Koranaika Sindho Vrindavana Sina Hitavatar Prasida Radha Pranaya Pracharo He Dinabandho Koranaika Sindho Guru Prasadam Maimanda Mudhe Laksha Parade Bahupapagadhe Tatpada Padme Stunapishta Krishna Naivo Payantya Vachitim Kavayasta Vesha Brahma Yushapi Kritim Riddha Buddha Smaranta Yontar Bahista Nubratam Ashubham Vadunvan Acharya Chaitya Vapusha Swagatim Vyanakti. I bow down to the beautiful lotus feet of my spiritual master, by whose causeless mercy I have obtained the supreme holy name, the divine mantra, the service of the son of Shachi Mata, the association of Srila Sarup Damodar, Rupa Goswami and his older brother Sanatan Goswami, the supreme abode of Mathura, the blissful abode of Vrindavan, the divine Radha Kund and Govardhan Hill, and the desire within my heart for loving service to Shri Radhika and Madhava in Vrindavan. O spiritual master, O giver of divine wisdom, O friend of the fallen, you are the giver of your own bliss, and you are the only ocean of mercy. Although dwelling in Vrindavan, you have descended for the welfare of fallen souls like myself, and you are preaching the divine love of Radha for Krishna. Please be kind upon me. O friend of the lowly, O Gurudev, you are the only ocean of mercy. I am a dull fool and have committed hundreds of thousands of offenses. I have fallen into a dense myriad of sins. Therefore grace me with your mercy, so that my mind may be fixed on your lotus feet and on Sri Krishna. O my Lord, transcendental poets and experts in spiritual science could not fully express their indebtedness to you, even if they were endowed with the prolonged lifetime of Brahma, for you appear in two forms, externally as the Acharya and internally as the Supersoul, to deliver the embodied living being by directing him how to come to you. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. Our only wish is to have our consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is perfection that fulfills all desires. It opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. Birth after birth. Static prema emanates. By him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor and the Lord master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Fame is spread all over the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Sri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma. Krishna Prapti Hoy Jaha Hoy Te Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chikate Go Viya Aikya. Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Bhakta. Vire Prokashita Divyajnana Vire Prokashita Prema Bhakti Jaha Hoite Ati Javinasa Jate Prema Bhakti Jaha Hoite Ati Javinasa Jate Vede Gai Kahara Karita Vede Gai Kahara Karita Sri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adhama Janana Bandhu Prabhu Pora Doya Deho More Pada Jaya Prabhu Pora Doya Deho More Pada Jaya Ede Jagti Sikhe Bhuvana Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nimshesha Shunyavadi Paschatyarishatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayam Vichapad Paramahamsa Prevrajakacharya Shtotaras Shishimad Bhai Charana Ravinda Bhaktivedanta Sai Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Prevrajakacharya Shtotaras Shishimad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosai Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gokupina Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Sri Mayapur Dham Dham Ki Jai. Sri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Jumuna Devi Ganga Devi Ki Jai. Sambeta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. Go Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Bhagavatam class. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Ballabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Vraja Janna Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye. Welcome everyone who's joined online and here in the live studio audience. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 72, the slaying of the demon Jarasandha, taking up at text number 38. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So we're in the middle of a fight, and this fight was prearranged because Yudhishthira, who's a saintly pure devotee, had decided to perform what's called the Rajasuya sacrifice. It's a huge ceremony. It's the biggest one practically that one could perform. And it requires consensus. It's a nice word to use. By all the kings of the world. They would have to submit to one person who would represent all the other kings. And if they didn't, then in what was called Kshatriya fashion, there would be a fight between those representing Yudhishthira, who would be his brothers, who went out in all directions to ask for donations. It's another nice way to put it. To help perform the Rajasuya Yagya. Those who wouldn't submit would then fight. This is quite natural for Kshatriyas. They're trained their whole lives. And there was a way in which whichever party was dominant would win the war, then that person would declare victory and the other would submit and willfully, give themselves in submission. So the reason that Yudhishthira was a pure devotee of Krishna. And the main objective of pure devotees is to put Krishna forth to the world. As Krishna himself says in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhoktaram Jagyatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suridam Sarvabhutanam Gyatva Mam Shantim Richati. That for there to be peace in the world, there has to be an understanding of the complete whole. That there is a source for all of us. And that it's in cooperation with that complete whole that we experience peace and prosperity. There's three aspects of that complete whole that Krishna mentions in this verse. That he's the one who receives our offerings. Yajna is a word used which means that we grow by giving. When we're trained in the system to give our work, as an example, to Krishna, who's the supreme and the complete whole, then we feel satisfied in our work. Otherwise, we become entangled by it. And our work, when offered to Krishna, becomes a source of enlightenment. We learn from it and we become better we develop good qualities. But when we work just for our own benefit, then it's entangling and frustrating. So the first principle that Krishna mentions in Bhuktaram Yakatapasam is that he's the one who can accept everything. And analogous is feeding the stomach. When the senses, including the working senses like the hands and the eyes, knowledge-gathering senses work together to feed the stomach, then they also become nourished because they're part of the senses. Of the stomach. The stomach naturally distributes nourishment to all the senses in the body. So in the same way, Krishna as the center distributes all the benefits of work and sacrifice to all living beings. Whereas if we try to enjoy separately, then we'll be frustrated. And then there are various disputes, or I should say numerous ongoing and unlimited disputes about who owns what in this world. It's a relief, actually, to understand this principle that there's one owner of everything, and that's the Supreme. We only have a little timeshare here. Anybody ever buy a timeshare? If you went to Hawaii, somebody asked you about it. Said, would you like to buy a timeshare? You don't know what they are? It's a little bit of a scam, but anyway, they're very popular because people go to Hawaii and then they think, oh, I should live here at least part of the time. It's so nice. And then there's people on the street, they sell these timeshares, which means that you can pay a certain amount of money and then they guarantee you a week or two, a year that you can book ahead of time and go and stay there. It's a timeshare. Nothing belongs to you. The apartment doesn't belong to you. You just pay the money and then they'll let you use it. So that's what we have here, a timeshare. But everyone thinks, this is my country, this is my house, I own all these things. So Krishna settles up here and he says, oh, that's okay, I own everything. It's all my property. And finally he says that I'm the friend of all living beings. Suridam sarvabhutanam. Sarvabhutanam means everybody, every living being. I'm the friend of the squirrels, the humans, the octopi. Is that plural of octopus? I hope. And so forth. Krishna's the friend because they're all his parts and parcels, and he cares for them just as much as we care for our fingers and toes, which are part and parcel of our body. And so Yudhishthira understood this principle, and this is the responsibility of a leader, is to organize a community, a society, a nation, a whole world, if you happen to be an emperor, in such a way that everyone can live live and execute these principles of giving to the Supreme and understanding who owns everything. It all belongs to Krishna. And finally, that Krishna is the best friend of all living entities. We're not the friend. We can represent the friend and in that way benefit other people, but Krishna is the only one who can give us ultimate benefit. And Yudhishthira, as the ruler, was fully dedicated to Krishna and knew these principles, whereas there were others trying to usurp the power of the world, including, as we know, Duryodhana, who in the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita we understand he's really the evil son of Dhritarashtra, and Dhritarashtra is a weak-hearted person. He was meant to give the kingdom to the Pandavas, headed by Yudhishthira, the 5 brothers of the Pandavas. And he couldn't do it because he got so attached to his son, so he illegitimately tried to push it over to his sons and also get rid of the Pandavas, which caused a lot of disturbance in the world. So to correct for that, Krishna wanted that Yudhishthira be enthroned as the emperor of the world. And Yudhishthira had this intense desire not to take power for himself, but to perform what's called the Rajasuya sacrifice in order to establish that Krishna is the 3 things that I mentioned earlier. Because at the Rajasuya sacrifice, when it begins, there is a consensus amongst all the participants, and that would include the greatest thinkers of the world who would appear there. And they would all decide who was the most elevated and worthy person to receive the first honors at the Rajasuya sacrifice. And Yudhishthira knew that it would come to Krishna, and that before everyone he would be honored. And therefore all kings, many of whom who had amassed on the earth, we know from the Bhagavatam, there was an inordinate development of demoniac rulers who had gathered on the earth, and they were throwing everything out of balance. They would also be at the Rajasuya sacrifice, and it would be shown in front of them that Krishna was the leader of everyone. So this was Yudhishthira's purpose. And so Yudhishthira, had consulted with Krishna, saying that I would like to perform this Rajasuya sacrifice in order to establish your supremacy. And Krishna had agreed to that. And one of the prerequisites for performing this Rajasuya sacrifice is that the person who's performing it would have to send out representatives all over the world and get the submission of all the other kings. So that was not very difficult. The Pandavas were born of demigods, and they were very powerful. Nobody really wanted to oppose them. Besides that, the Yudhishthira was so saintly that all the good-hearted kings in the world just naturally submitted. They were thinking, this would be great to have stability in the world and have a ruler who's pure-hearted. But there was one ruler, Jarasandha, who was a very powerful person, and he was also bad-hearted. He didn't want to submit to Krishna. It's an interesting case study because he was a very strict follower of the Vedic principles. He honored Brahmanas and he knew all the mantras, but he missed the point. Just like these two guys one day were digging, and one was making a hole and the other one was filling it back in again, and a man was observing from a distance and saw someone digging a hole and the other one then filling it back in, and they were going for almost half a mile, and then the observer came over and said, "Excuse me, but I noticed one of you is digging a hole, the other one's filling it back in." And they said, "Oh yeah, this is what we do. We plant seeds. We're planting trees here. But the guy who puts the seed in after we dig the hole and then fill it back in, he's not here today." So they missed the point. So sometimes people, they're called Vedavadaratis, as Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita. They study all the Vedas, but they miss the point that Krishna is meant to be worshipped. In the Gita, Krishna gives this conclusion, "Manmana bhava madbhakto, madhyaji mam namaskuru." That's just think of me, become my devotee. And in the next verse he says, "Sarvadharman parityaja," just give everything to me and I'll take care of you. So they miss that point and they try to independently use the tenets of the Vedas to elevate themselves in various ways in the material world, divorced from the actual ultimate principle of the Vedas, which is to come to surrender to Krishna. So this Jarasandha was actually, as I said, an interesting case study because he had attacked Krishna with ill intent 18 times. And the first 17 times, all his forces had been annihilated. And somehow or other, these kings were able to amass more and more forces because they were so powerful and autocratic. And each time they approached Krishna in Mathura, Krishna had easily defeated all of them, even though Krishna had a tiny army. Of course, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so it's not a big deal. But in a very dramatic fashion, he defeated all of Jarasandha's armies. And each time Jarasandha was defeated, he'd leave the battlefield dejected and surrounded by his ministers who were sycophants and who also were wrong-headed, would approach him and say, you know, it was a fluke. You could have won. You were this close. And this is the nature of the material world. Although it leads to defeat, Krishna says, Mogasha, Moga Karmano, Moga Jnana Vichetasa, Rakshasi Masarim Chaiva, Prakritim Mohinim Shrita, that when you have the wrong intention, that is, you don't understand that the purpose of life is to worship Krishna, then whatever you do, whatever big enterprise you develop, how many armies you amass, no matter how strong you become, it's all for naught. Mogasha, Moga Karmano means it's baffled. You become baffled in your attempts to achieve anything. Mogasha, Moga Karmano, your work, Moga Jnana Vichetas, your knowledge becomes eclipsed because of being wrong-headed. Moga Jnana Vichetasa Rakshasi Masurim Chaiva. Why? Because you have a bad mentality, a wrong mentality. You don't understand the purpose of life. So this was Jarasandha. Very powerful king, very oriented towards Vedic culture, but he was opposed to Krishna. So he fought these first 17 times. He was soundly defeated, and the 18th time there was special circumstances. That was that there was, it's a long story, but a person named Kalyavana who had been born specifically to give trouble to others. And he had approached the battlefield at the same time Jarasandha was coming for his 18th time to fight against Krishna. And so when Kalyavana came, Kalyavana was a very low-class person. He was nonetheless very powerful and he had armies. So when he came to the battlefield, Krishna fulfilled several purposes at one time. Krishna walked away from the battlefield. He's described as being very beautiful. He was wearing a garland of lotus flowers. And he was effulgent, and his beautiful lotus feet were walking on the ground. And Kalyavana was a very ugly character, warlike, and he thought, I will attack Krishna because I see that he's a coward. He's walking away from the battlefield. So he was chasing after Krishna, who was walking at medium speed, and Kalyavana was running as fast as he could, but he still couldn't catch him. This is mentioned in the Sri Brahma Samhita that although people, even yogis, they'll attempt to reach Krishna through their own means. They drill their respiration and they'll practice very intense modes of austerity to come to approach Krishna. They can't do so because Krishna can only be approached by devotional service. He says this in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Bhaktyamam abhijananti yavanyash chasmi tatvata tatomam tatvato gyatva vishite taranantaram. Only if you have devotion to me can you approach me, Krishna says. This is why bhakti is the supreme process, because it's quite natural, actually, that we don't tell our lives to people. If you get a phone call in the middle of the day with some weird number, do you ever get those? And then, of course, I don't pick them up generally, but every once in a while there can be a mistake because I'm expecting a call or something like that. I pick it up and they go, hi, how are you? So I went, who are you? Like, we'd like to know more about you. And I was like, no, that's all right, click. When people come with some motive, ulterior motive, they want something from you, and they're obviously not devoted, although they may even present themselves as being very devoted. We're going to really help you out here. And we generally don't reveal much to people. We don't want to give our social security number on the phone, right? But if you love somebody and you're very close to them and you trust them, then it's like, you want my social security number? Sure, go ahead. There's no hesitancy in love when you trust people. So devotees, they become trusted by Krishna as his sincere followers, and they try to glorify Krishna everywhere so other people can understand the three principles I mentioned at the beginning of the talk. And then Krishna reveals himself really out of love. Nayam sukhapo bhagavan dehinam gopika sutta jnaninam chatmabhutanam. Last word? Yatha bhaktimatam iha. That you can try through gyan, you can try through karma or yoga, or you can be, just get a big fat belly. But all those things won't help you to approach Krishna. But he very easily reveals himself to somebody who loves him. This is the point. So this is, I'm sorry, I'm in the middle of two stories. So Kalyavana came to the battlefield, and Krishna walked away, and Kalyavana couldn't catch him, but Krishna had an objective in mind. He knew, as he's omniscient, and he arranges. We may think, oh, Krishna didn't answer my prayers, but he always does. You don't have to, it's like those street lights. You ever come to a street light and you push the button and you think, I'll push it 7 more times. Maybe it'll go faster. So we're like, Krishna, I need this. And he's like, yeah, I got it. And it's just, he arranges things all at once. He batches them together. So he had batched together a way in which there was a great devotee of his. Sometimes people are unsung heroes. You just don't know where they are in the world. And this Muchukunda, he was a great king, actually, very devoted to Krishna, and he had done great service. And interestingly, he had served so well amongst the devas. These are powerful entities within the universe. They had given him a benediction, and he said, I need rest. And they gave him this benediction that if anybody wakes you up, they'll burn to ashes. That was really to keep demigods like Indra away, because Muchukunda was so sought after. He was, the most famous warrior, so people kept asking him to come, can you help us, can you help us? So he was sleeping and to getting his rest, and they gave him this benediction, if Indra comes and tries to wake you up and say, just one more fight, he'll burn to ashes. So everybody knew that, except for Kalyavana, who was chasing after Krishna, and Krishna knew where Muchukunda was, so he went in. Krishna went into the cave where Muchukunda was sleeping, and all the time this Kalyavana was running after Krishna, thinking, "I'm almost going to get him. I've almost got him." And then he ran in the cave and he saw somebody sleeping on the ground. He said, "Look at this coward. This is Krishna. He's sleeping, pretending to be asleep, so I won't attack him." So what did Kalyavana do? He wound up and he kicked Muchukunda as hard as he could. And Muchukunda woke up from his slumber. And Kalyavana actually was immolated. It means he was burned to death, but it came from a fire from his own sinful reactions. From within, they manifested and then burned his whole body. It wasn't necessarily the glance of Muchukunda, but it was the circumstances. And this is actually the plight of every living being, that we burn ourselves from the inside out. We collect these unwanted desires by bad association, and then they really burn us, and they take us away from our real interest in life. So this Muchukunda awoke, and he saw a fire, the fire of immolation of this Kalyavana, and then he noticed there was an effulgent being within his cave, who was Krishna. And after some discernment, he came to understand that this was his Lord, who had come right before him. So there's some very beautiful and poignant prayers that Muchukunda offers. They're worth studying. There's so many sets of prayers throughout the Bhagavatam that we can adopt as our own and offer prayers again and again through the words and feelings of the great pure devotees. So Muchukunda is someone we could relate to. He had had enough of the material world. He had enough experience here to know that he didn't want it anymore. He talked about the experience of being a king and how everyone respected him, but he had this cognitive dissonance because he understood that actually I'm controlled by my senses. Although I sit on this high seat and everyone calls me king and I tell people what to do and I command armies, he said I'm somebody who's controlled by my senses. This is an important aspect of devotional service, so much so that Rupa Goswami lists it as the first or entryway to devotional service when he wrote his book Upadeshamrita, which is the essence of advice in devotional service. He starts with the verse, Vacho vegam manasakrodha vegam, jihva vegam udarapasta vegam, etan vegam yo vishaheta tira, sarvamapimam prityavim nasishad. Which means that if somebody can control his or her senses, then that person becomes the master of the world. That means everyone can come to you and get help, because the senses are the masters of the world. We say, who actually rules the world? The senses do, the uncontrolled senses. Therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Shaknoti haiva yashodhum praksharira vimokshanat kama krodod babam vegam sayukta. Why do I miss the last line today? Sayukta. Just say the first word of the last line. Shaknoti haiva yashodhum praksharira vimokshanam kama krodod babam vegam sayukta sa sukhi nara means a happy human. Everyone say sukhi nara. Yeah, I'm going to Japan next week, so this is Japanese, sukhi nara. Sukhi nara means a happy human. And how do you become a happy human? Krishna says, control your senses. If you can develop the power, shaknoti haiva, the wherewithal to actually control your senses, he said, don't worry about it. You'll be happy even before you leave this world. So shaknoti haiva yashodhum, prak means before, sharira vimokshana, before you're liberated from your body. Kama, lust, krodha, bhayam. If you're liberated, if you're able to overcome these influences of the senses, then you'll be a happy human, even in this life. Isn't that amazing? Everyone's looking for happiness, and it comes through this process of bhakti yoga, or self-discipline. Vairagya vidya nija bhakti yoga shikshartameka purusha purana Shri Krishna chaitanya shariradari kripam buddhir yastavaham pavadye. Yeah, see, I got the last line. When you approach Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his process of devotional service, you naturally develop this power to control the senses by the mercy of Krishna. So this Muchakunda offered these beautiful prayers to Krishna, and then he walked out of the cave, he left Krishna, and he walked towards the north. Now in the Bhagavatam and in the Mahabharata, it's mentioned sometimes devotees, they head for the north. That meant going to the Himalayas. It's like when you go up in the mountains, there were no, Ritz-Carlton up there or anything. It was just, you went up there to basically give up this body and give up everything else. So you just keep walking till you got to the Himalayas. And so Muchakunda was headed for the north, and very happily so. We find this also in Sanatana Goswami. You know, he was prime minister and of Orissa. And when he left the employ, he quit his job, and he escaped from prison because his employer had put him in jail for not doing his work. And he left, and it was really hard getting out. He had to bribe, and then he had to disguise himself. And even as he was leaving, he got to a little inn, and his servant was carrying money with him, unbeknownst to Sanatana Goswami. And there was a mystic up there, astrologer, who could tell that somebody had a lot of wealth on them. And the innkeeper was a dacoit. He killed people for their money. So he was going to kill Sanatana and his servant that night. But Sanatana could understand, because he had been a prime minister and knew worldly dealings. He could understand that there's something wrong with this picture. These people are showing too much devotion to me. And so he went to his servant and he said, "Do you have anything with you? Did you bring any money?" And he said, "I brought 7 gold coins." And Sanatana said, "Hand them over." So he took those gold coins, did Sanatana, and he gave them to the innkeeper, and he said, "Donation." And the innkeeper said, "Oh, this is embarrassing. I was going to kill you for those. I'm glad you handed them over." He said, "I knew you had 8 gold coins." And then Sanatan went back to his servant, Ishana, and he said, "You have one more, right?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "You keep it and go home. I'm going on by myself. No more servant." And when he left that place, he was in the wilderness. He was heading toward Varanasi, where he would meet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And in that moment, we often think if I have a bank account full, it's packed full, so packed. And we never know when it's packed, because you think like, oh, maybe the bank will fail and I won't have anything tomorrow, right? Is everyone thinking like that? So you never know. You think it's such anxiety to have wealth. In fact, it's mentioned, Prabhupada mentions this. He said you can overcome this incredibly powerful impulse to covet wealth by remembering the troubles of keeping wealth. But Sanatana Goswami, there's practically nobody wealthier than him. He and his brother were rich as Croesus, and they had everything. They had power, influence, and so forth. But Srinivasacharya mentions in his song about the Goswamis, Tyaktva Turnamashesha Mandalapati Shrenim Sadat Tuchavat, that when they met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because of the compelling nature of Mahaprabhu and devotional service, it's so exciting when you meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or his devotees. You just want to be there. You don't care about anything else. I remember when I first joined the Krishna consciousness movement, and we went on traveling Sankirtan from San Francisco down to San Diego, and there was a couple of swamis down there that I really liked. And there was a little room upstairs, and they were having this Mangalarti Kirtan. And I went up there, and the Kirtan was going on, and I was just thinking, I just went back to Godhead. This is so nice. There's nowhere else I want to be, nothing else I want to have. And so this is the power of devotional service, when we have the association of the devotees. So Sanatan felt so relieved just to be on his way to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is what we get when we take to the process of devotional service. Everyone has some complexity in this lifetime. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, "Na rupam asyeha tatopa labhyate nanto na chadir na chasam pratishta ashvatamenam suvarudamulam asanga shastrena dritena chitva tatakpadam tat parimargitavyam yasmin gata na nivartanti bhuya tameva chadyam purusham prapadye yatak pravriti prashita purani," which means that we're entangled, really entangled. If you really start to notice how many entanglements you have, you make a list of them, you'd be really impressed, like how I got into this situation as a simple soul with only one duty to do in life, which is to serve God with all my heart and soul. How did I get so distracted? And it's because the material world is as sticky as mango sap. You get it in your hair, and good luck getting it out. You'll have to cut it off practically. So in this verse, it's mentioned that you should cut down this attachment to the material world, which is compared to a big banyan tree. And that detachment grows in one's heart when one becomes attracted to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates. And think, all I want to do is be a liberated soul like them. I just want to be a pure devotee. And then tatakpadam tat parimargitavyam, which means that now you have a journey to take. You can't get free otherwise. Everyone's like, hey, you want to go to Vrindavan? Can't. Busy. Why? Because I'm a baby. I can't go anywhere. And then you want to go to Vrindavan? Can't. I'm an adolescent. I can't go. I'm busy. It's my junior year. I got to get SAT 160, 1600. And after that, you want to go. It's like, no, I'm skipping gap year, and I got to work. Like, what do I got to work for? I got to work day and night. Bhaja Hure Mana. There's a Shrinanandana. There's a beautiful poem, song. It's a lament. It's like, how did I get so entangled? It's like, oh my Lord, just like free me from this entanglement so I can just serve you. And then, you get older, and it's that, it's this, it's that, blah, 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 blah. It goes on and on forever. And then next thing you know, you miss the chance. So tatakpadam tat parimargitavyam, if you can become freed from that tree by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates, then you can take parimargitavyam. Where are you going? I'm going back to Godhead. Let's just go. Enough of this nonsense. The whole material world is complete nonsense. It's a colossal hoax perpetrated on the living being. So Sanatan felt that relief. And so Muchakunda felt that. He went for the north and he was so satisfied. He had met Krishna. It was a fulfillment of his prayers that he had made eons before. And then it came to pass that he met Krishna. You see, you got to wait a little while for the light to change. So this pastime, Muchakunda was there. Krishna went back, and then he performed his really enchanting and endearing pastime of Ranchor, which means he pretended to be like an ordinary human being. After soundly defeating Jarasandha 17 times, and the 18th time, he took Balaram by the hand and said, let's get out of here. And they left the battlefield. Jarasandha chased him and tried, after Krishna and Balaram had climbed to the top of a mountain, they couldn't find him anywhere, so they tried to burn the mountain. Krishna and Balaram jumped off, and everyone thought they're finished, or Jarasandha thought. So Jarasandha was this looming character, and he had to be dispensed with before the Rajasuya sacrifice could take place. So Krishna was there in his palace in Dwarka, and they were considering about how to perform the Rajasuya sacrifice. Krishna had come, and Yudhishthira told him about his plan. Krishna had understood that they couldn't do it without defeating Jarasandha. So there were different opinions. He was amongst many different kinds of personalities, and they had different opinions about what to do about Jarasandha. So Krishna smiled, and then he deferred to Uddhava, because he knew Uddhava could solve the situation. Uddhava was a disciple of Brihaspati, and he looked just like Krishna. When Uddhava went to Vrindavan, everyone thought, hey, Krishna's back. And he was a great devotee, a Haridasa Varyo. He's one of the Haridasa Varyos, one of the great devotees, first-class devotees of Krishna. And so Krishna used to defer to him, to ask him for advice. What should we do about this? What should we do about that? So he said to Uddhava, you solve the situation. So Uddhava came up with this great plan of how to dispense with Jarasandha. He said, nobody can defeat him except for you, Krishna, through the hand of Bhima. And he had this plan that Krishna and Arjuna and Bhima would go to visit Jarasandha as disguised as brahmanas. I don't know how they did that, because they were really pumped up. And they had all the marks of warriors all over them. Warriors have all kinds of cuts and calluses, from fighting and shooting and stuff like that. But they went there disguised, and Jarasandha, as I mentioned, was very dutiful, and he used to give away tons of charity every day. So there was a time for him to do that. And when they came there, Krishna, Arjuna, Bhima, disguised as Brahmins, they came right at the time when this Jarasandha was giving away all his charity. So they came there, and Jarasandha said, what can I give you? I'll give you anything. I'll give you my very self, whatever. He was so dutiful towards the Brahmanas. And they said, we just want to fight with you. And so then he found out that they were in disguise, and that was Krishna, Arjuna, and Bhima. So he said, Krishna, you already ran away. I can't fight with you. He said to Arjuna, you're not that strong. You couldn't be a match for me. But he said, Bhima, our strength is equal. That'll be a good fight. Let's fight. So they went outside the city, and he provided the weapons, which were clubs, these big iron clubs. And just to give you a little scale, at that time, the the bodies of these are not ordinary human beings that we're talking about. Of course, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He has a completely transcendental body. Bhima, Arjun, they're born of devas. And Bhima has this supernatural strength. So, of course, so did Arjun and all the Pandavas. But Bhima was especially known for his strength in fighting. So even as they were hitting each other with clubs, the clubs were becoming damaged. Not that they were becoming damaged, and the fight went on for some time. So that's where we are in the story. I'll just read a few verses for you. Their clubs thus ruined, those great heroes among men angrily pummeled each other with their iron-hard fists. As they slapped each other, the sound resembled the crash of elephants colliding or harsh thunderclaps. As they thus fought, this contest between opponents of equal training, strength, and stamina reached no conclusion. And so they kept on fighting, O king, without any let-up. Purport. Some acharyas include the following two verses in the text of this chapter, and Srila Prabhupada has also translated them in Krishna. That is, we say Krishna book. And the translation is, thus, O king, they continued to fight for 27 days. At the end of each day's fighting, both lived at night as friends in Jarasanda's palace. Then on the 28th day, O king, Vrikodara, Bhima, thus told his maternal cousin, Madhava, I cannot defeat Jarasandha in battle. Lord Krishna knew the secret of his enemy Jarasanda's birth and death, and also how he had been given life by the demoness Jara. Considering all this, Lord Krishna imparted his special power to Bhima. Purport. Srila Prabhupada writes that Lord Krishna, quote, knew the mystery of the birth of Jarasandha. Jarasandha was born in two different parts from two different mothers. When his father saw that the baby was useless, he threw the two parts in the forest, where they were later found by a black-hearted witch named Jara. She managed to join the two parts of the baby from top to bottom. Knowing this, Lord Krishna therefore also knew how to kill him. Having determined how to kill the enemy, that Lord of infallible vision made a sign to Bhima by tearing in half a small branch of a tree. Understanding this sign, mighty Bhima, the best of fighters, seized his opponent by the feet and threw him to the ground. Bhima pressed down on one leg with his foot while grabbing Jarasandha's other leg in his hands. And just as a great elephant might break the branch of a tree, Bhima tore Jarasandha apart from the anus upward. The king's subjects then saw him lying in two separate pieces, each with a single leg, thigh, testicle, hip, shoulder, arm, eye, eyebrow, and ear, and with half a back and chest. With the death of the Lord of Magadha, a great cry of lamentation arose. That's from his followers. Well, Arjuna and Krishna congratulated Bhima by embracing him. The immeasurable Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sustainer and benefactor of all living beings, coronated Jarasandha's son, Sahadeva, as the new ruler of the Magadhas. The Lord then freed all the kings Jarasandha had imprisoned. The kings had also sent a message to Krishna mentioning how they had been taken by Jarasandha and had been kept captive. So that was another purpose that he fulfilled by going there to reclaim the king. Beautiful prayers that these kings offer. Very relatable, because in the same mood as Muchukunda, it's like we really thought we were something, and now look where we are. You know, Krishna, please help me. That's a good prayer. Srila Prabhupada writes, although Jarasandha was killed, neither Krishna nor the two Pandava brothers made a claim to the throne. Their purpose in killing Jarasandha was to stop him from creating a disturbance against the proper discharge of world peace. A demon always creates disturbances, whereas a demigod always tries to keep peace in the world. The mission of Lord Krishna is to give protection to the righteous persons and to kill the demons who disturb a peaceful situation. Therefore, Lord Krishna immediately called for the son of Jarasandha, whose name was Sahadeva. And with due ritualistic ceremonies, he asked him to occupy the seat of his father and reign over the kingdom peacefully. Lord Krishna is the master of the whole cosmic creation, and he wants everyone to live peacefully and execute Krishna consciousness. After installing Sahadeva on the throne, he released all the kings and princes who had been imprisoned unnecessarily by Jarasandha. Thus end the purports. Om Tat Sat. That ends that chapter. The next chapter is called Lord Krishna Blesses the Liberated Kings. So those are all the kings that Jarasandha had captured and then kept in a cave in very horrible conditions. So we'll get into that a little later. But let's just take any reflections or questions at this point. Yes, Prabhu. Nagar Kirtan.
Just one small detail I was curious about. You were talking about how Krishna makes it known that he's Suradam Sarva Bhutanam, the best friend of all living entities, and that the jiva, or even the representative of Krishna, is not the friend of all, but he represents the friend of all. And I was thinking about the verse in third canto where Kapila Dev, who's also a Shaktivesh avatar, please correct me if I'm wrong in understanding that, or he's an incarnation of Krishna, and he mentions that the devotee is Suradharma Sarva Dehinam. So I was wondering if you could help us understand the difference in the terms Dehinam and Bhutanam in this context, and also the how it manifests that quality of a friend to all living entities in terms of a sadhu or a devotee, and how that still is a applicable term, even while understanding that position really belongs to Krishna.
It's in the mood of the representative. If a person comes, let's say, from a company, name a company. Okay, Nestle's. So a representative from Nestle's comes here and then tries to claim autonomy from the company. They were going to come here to make a deal with us that they would distribute a Bhagavad Gita with every packet of hot cocoa that they distribute. But when he comes here, he takes on an air that, well, I don't care what the company says, this is my idea. This would be errant on his part. However, a good representative would come and is given power of attorney. And power of attorney means you have to represent the company, what they want, what the board of directors has decided, what the CEO has empowered you to do. And when the person comes and represents properly, you'll notice that they don't speak on their own behalf. They just say, okay, what my company managers say, this is what I'm allowed to do. This is the leeway that I've been given. And they stay within that. And that's the mood of the devotees. Actually, the devotees are Suridam Sarvadehinam because they represent Krishna so well. And it's even more important than Krishna in the sense that the representatives can penetrate the lives and hearts of those who are in the world. Krishna has his own mode of walking in the world through which he benefits everybody. That's Anugrahaya Bhaktanam Manusham Deham Astita. There's a way in which Krishna comes specifically so everyone can see. There is a God, he does have senses, he's not senseless. He's not amorphous or nothing, as most people conclude, wanting to just run the show themselves rather than having a boss. There is no boss. It's like, so who's in control? Me? So the devotee has imbibed this spirit of I'm representing Krishna. And what's more, the devotee looks like an ordinary human being, and is, but still has this empowerment, this Shakti, because of being aligned with Krishna's purpose. No longer has his or her own purpose in mind, but only Krishna's purpose in mind, and therefore can actually do good for others. And that's why the devotees are celebrated as being more merciful than Krishna, because they take on Krishna's mission, and they become the ones who actually go to the trouble of going door to door, going to people's homes, going to events where people are trying to enjoy a simple boat show, and then they get tapped on the shoulder. And we used to go to these kids back in the old days. There used to be these things called drive-in theaters. You probably never heard of them, right? It's already past a generation. People used to drive into the theater in their car because they're too lazy to get out of their car even. And they drive in, and then they'd hook up this thing to your window so you could hear the sound, and you'd watch the screen from the car. So it would be a huge parking lot with a gigantic screen. And then, even then, I think people would come around and sell popcorn or whatever, or they have to go get it, I don't know, bring their own. Those are called drive-in theaters. Yeah, it's complete. The generation has switched over because you never heard of it. But we've heard of it, and they were very popular back in I think they were probably coming to the end of their popularity in the 70s. But we used to go in there and go around and knock on people's windows. We're like, what? Show them a Krishna book while they're watching the movie. I don't know how I got there, but anyway. Huh? Yeah, because devotees, they go to drive-ins and extend Krishna's invitation to come back to Godhead. Let's take one or two more. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj, for the wonderful class. I have a question. So when Krishna kills some person, like he killed 23 Akshauhini Sena of Jarasandha 17 times. So I was wondering that these people go back, maybe merge in the Brahman effulgence, or their desire is purified and they get liberated, right? So, but they don't, it's not their free will. I mean, it's not their desire to get liberated, right? So the question is that, like, how Krishna is killing them and then they're going back, and if everybody, like, why not others, then why don't, like, kill everyone and get them?
Well, let's take Shishupal as an example. It's easier to take one person who represents all the others. So Shishupal, when he was growing up, when he was a baby, how old before babies start to talk? 1 year. 1 year? They talk at 1 year. Huh? Anybody know, actually? Okay, 1 year. 1 year. So what do they say at 1 year? Mama? Dada? What did Shishupal say? He had only bad things to say about Krishna. His little baby, let's hear him talk. And he's like, I hate Krishna. He had nothing good to say about Krishna from the time he was a baby, and throughout his whole life, his main purpose in life was to defeat Krishna, kill Krishna. And when the Rajasuya sacrifice came, there was the ceremony I mentioned earlier where you had to put forth by a vote who would be the person who was first honored as the most exalted of personalities. And someone put Krishna forward, and Shishupal, he became so disturbed. He's like, why him? Why him? Why him? And who knows even who he is? And he's done all these horrible things, and he was going on and on and on. And Krishna was just watching because he had given some kind of benediction that he would allow 100 blasphemies before he would kill Shishupal mercifully. So when he threw his disc at Shishupal to cut off his head, the acharyas say there was a millisecond where Shishupal was looking at Krishna. He said, wow, he's kind of beautiful. And then and right in that second, there was this modicum of appreciation, which any appreciation of Krishna means liberation. And so there's a famous verse in the Bhagavatam, third canto, about, is it Vidura? Or perhaps it's Maitreya. No, not Maitreya. Or perhaps it's Uddhava, who's mentioning that the demons are more fortunate than I am, because on the battlefield they get to see Krishna right before they're killed, and they're liberated. So there's a sense when Krishna's present of his qualities are so enchanting. That's why he's named Krishna. That the senses of such a person become overwhelmed and appreciative of something about Krishna, even as they're being assailed or they're about to be killed, and they take that liberation because of that, right before they're killed by him. But especially those who are killed by Krishna in Vrindavan are immediately liberated. Others are mentioned in the Lakhu Bhagavatamrita, by other forms of Narayan and so forth. They achieve benefit, but not the same kind of immediate liberation that they do in Vrindavan, because just the sheer beauty of Krishna in Vrindavan. Okay, I have time for one more. Yes.
I have two questions, Maharaj. So the first question is, could you give a little bit more elaboration on cognitive dissonance? And the second question is, I was just curious if the son of Jarasandha was a devotee, or did he actually submit to the Pandavas?
Okay, so cognitive dissonance is a psychological term, and it means that you're aware of what the right thing to do is, but you're not doing it. And there are two examples that are frequently given in this regard. One is smoking. So most people have heard a lot about how we shouldn't smoke, but they've developed a callousness towards it one way or another. You have to sort of have an attitude that, who cares? I don't care if I die. It's like everyone cares if they die. And they especially care if they die of cancer. And if you see it right in front of your face, like you do in India, the packets of cigarettes, they have a picture of open cancerous sores right on the package. Right? Yeah, so people are like, yeah, I'll light up anyway. And so there's this dissonance. Resonance means it goes together. Dissonance means the vibration doesn't, it's conflicting with the other vibration. Very subtle, but it's like a lack of integrity, because you know what the right thing to do is, but you can't do it. When you're able to do the right thing, don't you feel great? You don't need anything else. You're just like, I know I'm good for it. I can do this. I can actually control my senses. It doesn't matter if anybody's watching. I know I can do this. I have that strength. You feel empowered in that way. You feel happy, and it doesn't matter what you have or don't have if you have that integrity. But cognitive dissonance means you understand that you're doing the wrong thing and you can't stop it, or you're making some excuse. Another one that's frequently given is when people eat meat and they're pet lovers. I've seen this so many times, even relatives and stuff, oh, we love animals. And like, really? All of them? Or just your dogs? So there's that dissonance also. I felt it as a kid, because I was like, what's really going on here? It was like a veil over it, and it really felt like a weird thing happening until I finally figured it out one fine summer day, and I said, that's it. I'm out of this scam here that you're running. And that's going on in so many different levels in the world, that we're full of that dissonance. And the second, we'd have to do a little more research about Sahadeva. Of course, it reminds us of Bibhishana, right? The Ramayana, because Bibhishan was such a great devotee, and his brother was such a demon, the iconic demon Ravana. And it's just funny how in some families, some people stick out as really bad. Other people are really good. Thank you very much. And now we have the presentation by our Vaishnava youth. We have a 15-minute talk. Are you ready? Yes, he's taking off his coat, so he's ready. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Hare Krishna, respected devotees, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, and please accept my humble obeisances. My name is Raghav Bardawaj, and I shall be presenting today on the topic of whether or not devotees are poor. Okay. Okay. So, in history, there have been many examples of very rich devotees, such as Ambarish Maharaj, and very poor devotees, such as Sudama. Thus, the real question is, what defines a devotee's affluence? Is a devotee who is materially poor, but is satisfied with everything he has, and only wants to serve the Lord, is that devotee poor? Or is a man who is materially rich, has all the opulences in the world, however does not have pure devotional love, is such a man considered poor? So we shall answer this question by various examples of many devotees in the past. The Avanti Brahmana was Bhagavad Gita states that Lord Krishna provides us with so many opulences. However, if we do not use those opulences in the service of the Lord, or we do not give it back to him, we are considered thieves. The Avanti Brahmana was a very rich Brahmana, but he was miserly and harsh even to his own family. He never participated in charities or even gave any money to local temples. So, when his store of good luck ran out, he gradually lost all his wealth, and even his family members rejected him. In such a destitute condition, he wanted to realize how he ended up in such a situation and decided to become a wandering monk. While he was journeying across the earth, he was mistreated by many people. However, he accepted this mistreatment as the fruit of his bad actions in the past. He realized that one should use the wealth to worship Lord Krishna instead of for their own personal desires. Only if they use this wealth in the correct way, they can be happy in life. Maharaj Bali was a very great demon king who held many local charities and used to give money to the Brahmanas. One day, Vamanandev, an incarnation of Lord Vishnu, appeared at one such yajna and asked for 3 steps of land. Bali Maharaj's guru, Sukracharya, saw that Lord Vamanadev was not an ordinary Brahmana. He was Lord Vishnu himself, and he would take everything that Maharaj Bali has accumulated. Thus, he advised Bali to not give anything to this Brahmana and to break his promise. However, Maharaj Bali did not follow the advice of Sukracharya, and he gave Vamanadev the 3 steps of land. Vamanadev assumed a gigantic form, and he covered all of the 3 worlds that Maharaj Bali conquered in 2 steps. Bali Maharaj offered his head for Lord Vamana to place his 3rd step on. Pleased by such devotional behavior, Vamanadev became Maharaj Bali's guard or doorkeeper on his own planet. So, the Avanti Brahmana had not offered anything to Lord Krishna, but only kept the wealth for himself. He gradually lost all of it, and Lord Krishna gave him realization or spiritual realization to make him understand his duty in life. Maharaj Bali was a very great devotee and a Mahajan who offered everything to the Lord, despite knowing that he would lose everything that he's accumulated across his life. However, the Lord rewarded him with a planet and became his doorkeeper. Now, Sudama was a very dear childhood friend of Krishna. However, he lived in abject poverty and barely had enough to get by. His wife, seeing him in such a destitute condition, asked him to go to Lord Krishna, the great king of Dwarka, and ask for some help. Under his wife's insistence, and only to satisfy his wife, he went to Dwarka. For Sudama had no material desires, and all he wanted was to serve Lord Krishna with pure devotional love. So, upon arriving at Dwarka, the gate guardians of the great palace there thought he was crazy when he said he was a childhood friend of Krishna, the great king. Only after many requests did they go to Lord Krishna and say that his childhood friend Sudama was at the gate. Upon hearing such wonderful news, Lord Krishna rushed out and hugged Sudama with open arms publicly. Sudama was treated like a king inside the palace of Dwarka. Lord Krishna personally washed his feet, and he was dressed in royal robes and sat on the very throne the king of Dwarka sits on. So, upon discussing their childhood pastimes, Lord Krishna saw that Sudama had brought a little gift for him. This little gift was a few handfuls of chipped rice wrapped in a rag. Sudama did not give this gift to Lord Krishna because he thought that it would not be worthy for a great and affluent king. However, Lord Krishna did not think the same. He thought this gift to be the most wonderful thing he has ever received in his life. Thus, he took the chipped rice and had 1 handful. When he was going to have a second handful, Queen Rukmini stopped him. This is because 1 handful was enough to guarantee Sudama a lot of wealth for many, many lives to come. When Lord Krishna asked Sudama why had he come to Dwarka, Sudama simply said, only to satisfy him. He had no desires from Lord Krishna, and as he was a pure devotee who only wanted to serve Krishna for eternity. When he arrived at his small, humble hut, he saw a very big palace. He thought that he had arrived at the wrong place. However, his wife stepped out of the palace, adorned with jewels and royal saris, and she was followed by many beautiful maidservants. Only then did Sudama realize the Lord Krishna had blessed him with opulence that not even the demigods in heaven could think about. Sudama pledged to only use this wealth in the service of the Lord. He did not want to get ensnared by the claws of Maya that such material opulence can bring. Now we have A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. He was not materially affluent, for he had many failing businesses. However, upon meeting Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, his main goal in life was to preach this amazing and transcendental knowledge to the Western world. At the age of 69, he boarded the Jaladuta and traveled to the Americas. However, he faced many challenges on his way. For example, he had 2 heart attacks. He thought that he would not survive. However, in his dream, Lord Krishna and all the wonderful incarnations appeared in a boat and said to him that he should keep going on without giving up, for they will protect him and provide him with everything he needs. Thus, Upon arriving on the Western world, he converted many devotees and formed the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, otherwise known as ISKCON. He held many kirtans in public parks, which attracted many people to this movement. And also, while preaching, he translated many books to the English language and many other languages for people to understand the Vedas and read them personally. He opened countless centers across the world. So, in these two scenarios, Sudama and A.C. Bhaktisiddhanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, even though they were not materially affluent, Lord Krishna had provided them with everything they had needed. So, the real question is, what is real opulence? Real opulence is serving Krishna without any expectations, as the verse in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu states, Anya bilashita shunyam jnana karma dhanavatam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktiruttama. We should serve the Lord without any expectations or material desires. Only then can we get this real opulence. Now, what gives a devotee happiness? The first thing is chanting the holy names of the Lord. While one chants the holy names, they start remembering the Lord. This holy hymn that they chant is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. While chanting these hymns, they can remember the Lord, which makes them happy. Now, we can listen to lectures from bona fide sources such as Srila Prabhupada. Listening to the Vedas from such realized sources will give us insight into the Vedas. It helps us understand what is the true meaning of life and what are we supposed to do in this material world. That is, we should serve Lord Krishna to go back to Godhead, Golaka Vrindavan. Another thing is Sankirtan. Sankirtan is a very easy way for one to go back to Godhead. In Satyuga and many other yugas, they used to conduct sacrifices for thousands and thousands of years. However, we cannot do this in this Kali Yuga. Thus, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu preached that we should recite the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which would make us remember Krishna and take us back to the spiritual realm. Another thing is book distribution. As one distributes books, he preaches these holy Vedas to others. Not only are the people given a chance to become happy, the person who distributes these books also becomes happy, for they are giving knowledge to others. Now, honoring prasad. Prasad, I believe this is everyone's favorite, right? Yes. So, prasad is essentially the remnants of Lord Krishna's food. As we eat these remnants, it becomes easier to remember Krishna. And not only is it a very easy way to remember Krishna, it's a very satisfying way, I may believe. So, real opulence. It's not how much you have. You may be very rich or you may be very poor. However, there's one thing in life that you must always have. That is pure devotional love to Krishna. That is what makes us truly happy. If you want to be truly happy, then you must chant the names of Krishna. You must attend lectures to understand the Vedas. You must go to Sankirtan. You must book distribute. Or you must eat prasad. Hare Krishna.
Raghav, that was fantastic.
Thank you.
You're a natural orator. And the subject matter was so interesting. I really liked the way you spoke because there were no ums and ahs. I really noticed not one through the whole talk. It was so well put together, and you delivered with such enthusiasm. And the subject matter was very convincing. It's such a nice presentation.
Thank you.
Really, A+.
Thanks.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
We should stop. It's 9:32. We're having another program here today. So let's thank Raghav one more time. And based on your talk, Raghav, I do have one more important thing to say. Sharirad Vijaja Jodendriya Taheka Jive Pele Vishaya Shakare Dharma Jivayati Loba Moisu Durmati Take Jeta Katita Samsare Krishna Bharadoya Moy Kori Bade Jivaja Swaprashadana Diloba Shayanamrita Pao Radha Krishna Gunagao Preme Dako Shri Chaitanya Nihita Preme Dako Shri Chaitanya Nihita Ma Prasade Govinde Nama Brahmani Vaishnave Sopa Punya Vatam Rajan Vishwaso Navijayate Prasade Sarva Dukanam Haniraso Pajayate Prasanna Chetaso Yashu Buddhipaya Vatishta Trayopa Buddha Sunyanga Vasudangara Tarchitaha Tishta Bojino Dasa Bhagavat Shri Mahaprasad Ki Gaur Premanande Nitai Gaura Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Nitai Gaura Hari Bo Hansapriya, is it time for prasadam? Please come, always, please come take prasadam. Haribol. Vanchakalpadurusha kripasnave vacha patitanam bhavanibhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.